AutoCAD is a computer-aided drafting program. It's here to help us create construction documents. Now, in order to do so, we have to create a geometric database or a model. It can be a group of either two-dimensional lines or a 3D solid model. Once the modeling is complete, we have to annotate it to display to others what it is and what its features are. Let's open up the dimension example file. AutoCAD is organized into two working environments or spaces to help us accomplish this task. They are represented by the Model Space and Paper Space tabs. You can see them down here on the bottom of your screen. The Model Space tab, and then the others are Paper Space tabs. These tabs can be hidden, appearing instead as buttons on the status bar at the bottom center of the application window. Now, if you don't see these tabs, you can turn them on by right-clicking in the buttons and clicking to turn them on. So if I click here, I can turn on Model Space. This will tell me I'm in Model Space or Paper Space tabs. Now I can also go into the options. If I go to my Display tab, and you'll see the Display Layout and Models tab button right here. If I turn it off, click OK, those buttons go away. I can also get to them, though, by coming up here to the File tab. The Model Space will always be called Model. You can't change the name of that. But the Paper Space tabs can be called just about anything you want them to be. So you can get to them that way. If you turn these off, it might save you a little bit of room, but I prefer leaving them on. It's all up to you. Type in OP or the word Options to get to your options, and go to the Display tab and click on the button there. Now, typically, a model composed of geometric objects is created in a three-dimensional space called Model Space. That's what this is here. A final layout of specific views and annotations of this model is created in a two-dimensional space called Paper Space. That's right here. These spaces are accessible on two or more tabs near the bottom of the drawing area. The Model tab and at least one other Layout or Paper Space tab. Oftentimes we'll refer to these as Layout tabs or Paper Space tabs. They mean the same thing. So working on the Model tab, you'll draw your subject here, and you'll draw it at a 1:1 scale. Working in the Layout tab, you can create one or more layout viewports. You can add dimensions, notes, and a title block to represent a drawing sheet. So this is where your paper drawing comes to play. Each layout viewport is sort of like a picture frame containing a photograph of the model in Model Space. That's this box right here. It's the viewport. Each layout viewport contains a view that displays the model at the scale and orientation that you specify. And you can also specify which layers are visible in each layout viewport. After you finish arranging the layout, you turn off the layer oftentimes that contains the layout viewport objects. Alternatively, you can set the viewport layer to a no print setting, which is what I typically do, so that it's visible on the screen but it won't print out. In either case, the views are still visible, and you can plot the layout without displaying the viewport boundaries. Just to recap, Model Space contains the drawing geometry or the model, and Paper Space is what's going to be printed out on paper. That's the main difference between these two spaces. Making a design in AutoCAD is more than just drawing lines and circles. It's a complex process that's been developed so that we can create complex designs. One of the keys to efficient CAD work is to organize your data in a way that you and others can retrieve it and understand it. Model Space is meant to be a three-dimensional area where you can draw and create your design. Your design needs may not include three-dimensional models, but only two-dimensional, and that's okay. Regardless of how many dimensions your design requires, the model for it belongs in Model Space. Let's look at some examples. Let's open up the dimension example drawing. This is an example of a two-dimensional model. Go to Model Space. The only thing here is the line work. We have the outside line for the bracket, these circles, the slot, and their center lines. Now if we go to Paper Space, any one of these tabs, click on the Dimensions tab. We have no line work. We just have the dimensions and the viewport that visually displays the model for us in Paper Space. This is a very simple example, but very clear as to what's going on. because sometimes the lines between model and paper space can be blurred. Let's make a new layout tab. Right-click on any of these here and select New Layout. And that creates a layout called Layout 1. And typically when you do that, it will automatically generate a viewport for you of your model. Now, when we create a new paper space tab, we have a viewport already made. If we select it, right-click, and delete it, it goes away. Now you can see here, there's nothing left. All we have is a blank piece of paper. If you want to create a new viewport, just type in the word Viewports, all one word, VPORTS. Click on the single option, click OK, pick a point, and then pick another point. And here we have a viewport set up looking into our model. Double-click inside the viewport, and if you zoom in and out with your scroll wheel, or if you use the pan command, it repositions and resizes the way the model looks inside your drawing here. If you come down here to the status bar, click on this little button here, this gives us a scale. Now this is set up right here as an 8.5 by 11 size sheet of paper. So if we pick a scale of 1 to 10, you can see it's a little too big. Change the scale 1 to 20, still a little too big. If we go 1 to 40, that fits much better. Once you pick the scale and position for the view of model space through your viewport, you want to lock that viewport. That can be found right here in your status bar. Click it and it's locked. Now that it's locked, I can zoom in and out and pan back and forth, and I'm just doing the zoom and pan commands again. Double click anywhere outside of the viewport and that will deactivate the viewport and you're in paper space again. If I double click inside the viewport, I'm activating temporary model space, as it's referred to, and I can edit my model. Now, if I delete any of these items in here, it's deleted from my file. But if I don't want to show the center lines, I come up here to the Home tab, go to the Layers panel, click on this little freeze button, looks like a paper with a snowflake, and then I pick these lines. I'm also going to freeze the circles. Right-click to finish the command, and double-click out here. Now I am free to annotate this piece of material so that it can be fabricated and then eventually sent off to have the holes drilled and the slot made later on. So this is one drawing. This drawing of the same model has everything shown. This one has different styles of dimensions. And this one here is fully dimensioned out. If I go to model space, I have just my line work. So I created 4 different drawings from one file in one set of line work. That's the big difference between model space and paper space. Now, model space, you want to just put your model in, just the line work, nothing else. Of course, there are always exceptions, and it depends on the situations. And I know a lot of people will dimension inside model space. Now, a lot of cases, that's perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with that. But typically, I have found in my experience for it to be easier to maintain my drawings if I only annotate in paper space. Now, as we have discussed in several sections and chapters, model information goes into model space and annotations go in paper space. In order to annotate anything, we need to have the model visible in paper space. This is done through viewports, and I've shown you a couple of times now how to quickly create a viewport. Think of a viewport as a window to model space or a photograph of that model that you can label, and it just happens to be in paper space. Now, since each viewport is its own photo, we can do anything we want to them and they won't affect anything else, not to the model. Just like if I took a picture of my house, I can do whatever I want to that picture. My house is unchanged and perfectly fine. That's how a viewport works. You can use those viewports to arrange the views of your drawing on a sheet. You can move and resize layout viewports all that you want. By using layout viewports, you have more control over the display. For example, you can freeze certain layers in one layout viewport without affecting the others. Let's open up the ice rink example file. This file right now is in model space, and we have one paper space tab. it only shows the top part of the ice rink. Let's create a new one. Right-click on it, select New Layout, and it will automatically call it Layout 2. Now, if you want to change that, right-click on the Layout tab, click on Rename, and just give it whatever you want. Type it in. When a new tab is made, a default viewport is created, and the view that's created in it is sort of like a zoom extents inside the viewport. You can use it, or you can make another one from scratch. We're going to use this one, and then we'll make another one. Remember, a viewport is an object just like anything else. It can be moved, copied, and deleted too. If we use the Move command, select the viewport, moves it all the way over here. Now you can grip edit a viewport as well. Select it, and it changes the shape. Now I'm going to move it again, put it over here. You activate a viewport by double-clicking inside it. Once you're inside it, if you zoom or pan, it changes the view inside that viewport, so be careful. But let's change the scale of this. You do that while the viewport is activated. Come down here to the status bar and go to your XREF scales. Let's change it to 1 to 100. I'm going to realign this a little bit like that. Once you get your viewport scale and the view position the way you want it, make sure you lock it. Go back down to the status bar and click on this lock button. That way you can't accidentally pan or zoom it into the wrong place. Double click outside of the viewport to deactivate it and go back into Paperspace. Now let's make a new viewport. If you want to create a new viewport, then you go to the Layout tab and you come to the Layout Viewports panel right here. You have a couple of different options. If you click on the button here, you can select an object. So if you already have an object created, something that's closed, like a polygon or a closed polyline, you can select that and it will become your new viewport. You can draw a rectangular shaped viewport or draw a polygonal shape. Let's draw a rectangular shape. You can just pick anywhere and draw a rectangle. That creates a brand new viewport for you. Double click inside to activate it and zoom into this entrance. Let's set the scale at a 1 to 30. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Let's make it 1 to 10. And lock the viewport. Deactivate the viewport. Now when a viewport is locked, remember you can't change the scale or pan inside it. And that's a good thing because you don't want that to happen. Lock it right away. Now let's add some overall dimensions here. Go to the Annotate tab, click on the dimensions, and here you go. We have some inside dimensions as well. And now we can do that here without messing up anything inside our model space. And it doesn't show up on our other drawings, which is great. If I activate this Paperspace viewport, I kind of zoom in here and I dimension while I'm in model space. These dimensions are now going to show up everywhere. When I come over here, you can see them showing up in this drawing. That's why I prefer to dimension and annotate in Paperspace only, because I don't want to have to deal with that. Now, sometimes you need a viewport that's not rectangular in shape, and that's okay. We kind of alluded to that. Go to your Layout tab, and this is a contextual tab. It will only show up when you're in Paperspace. Come over here, go to Polygon, draw your shape, press Enter. Activate the viewport, move it around so you can see it, and you can also always come back and edit your viewport to make it a little smaller or to change exactly what's being shown. You can get some crazy shapes. Sometimes that's necessary. Now, sometimes when you activate a viewport, you activate the wrong one. That's okay. Press Control R, and that will toggle through all of the viewports in the Paperspace tab. So that makes it easier to get to the one that you need, especially if you're having trouble. Now you can also clip a viewport. Pick on the clip option. I find a viewport, I select it, press Enter. Now I have a couple of options. I can draw a new clip, just like I would any other polyline, and that will recreate it and give it a polyline type of a format. So in case you have a viewport already, but it doesn't quite show it the way you want it, you can change it by clipping it, or you can just create a brand new one, whatever works best for you, whatever the situation calls for. So there are a lot of things you can do with viewports. You can also, don't forget, you can also freeze specific layers in one viewport only so that you don't see things here, but it keeps them on your other views. And this is what becomes so powerful about viewports and Paperspace inside one file that allows you to create many different types of views all in one drawing without affecting your model.